What does it say about India? That's actually more important than anything else. Here is the Prime Minister of India, after all the criticism he has faced in America and everywhere else, going to meet the Grand Mufti. That is a very significant moment of the visit, and it should not be forgotten.
Absolutely. While also talking about two of the important factors, of course, Modi now projecting that India has the support of one of the most significant Arab countries, but more importantly, we've also seen how China has been that silent factor, whether it was Prime Minister Modi's meetings in the United States, the kind of reception that the Indian Prime Minister got in the United States and the result of those meetings, or whether it is this meeting in Egypt. China has been one factor that has been one of the key points there, the silent factor in these meetings that the Prime Minister is holding, while also, of course, important to mention the Pakistan factor that has not come up at all. And it's significant to mention that this could not have been possible just a few years ago.
Well, first of all, cross-border terrorism did come up in America. But as far as India and Egypt is concerned, in America, of course, the fact that China is creating problems in the Indo-Pacific is an issue. But even here, closer ties with Egypt will mean a lot to India. And India and Egypt have had closer ties. Today, Prime Minister Modi went to the Heliopolis cemetery. Let's not forget that the two most significant battles of World War II were fought in Egypt. And they were at Alam Halfa and El Alamein in 1942, in August, between July and September. And the important point is that Indian soldiers fought in those battles which stopped the Nazis. The Germans were led by the legendary General Erwin Rommel. And yet the 4th Indian Division and other Indian units fought to save Egypt from the Nazis. This is something that the Egyptians have not forgotten, that Indian soldiers, even in 1942, not just World War I, fought for Egypt and in Egypt to save Egypt from domination by the Germans. The Battle of Alam Halfa and the Battle of El Alamein are two of the most significant battles of World War II, and the Indian soldiers fought there. The 4th Indian Division was present in strength in both those battles. This is something that India may have forgotten to an extent, maybe, but the Egyptians have not forgotten what India has done. And it is only right that Prime Minister Modi went to the Heliopolis cemetery today. He did the right thing by paying tribute to the soldiers who laid down their lives in World War I. Many of them are there, and it was a tribute to the Indian soldier.
Yes, and in fact, there have been concerns about China's growing influence in the Egypt region as well. And the bilateral trade with Egypt is currently at $15 billion, which is almost double that of India. So this visit and the trade talks that India is going to be holding with Egypt, the deals that are going to be signed, are going to have an impact in the near future.
Oh, undoubtedly. Egypt is a country of 110 million people. That's not a small number. And we had the Egyptian ambassador, while Hamid, telling us that, yes, of course, it's 110 million people, but that's not all. Because if you have duty-free access from Egypt, then you reach out to 1.3 billion people. If you combine the populations of Africa and Europe and the Middle East, it adds up to 1.3 billion people. So Indian manufacturers don't just have the Indian population. They will have, if they invest in the Suez Canal economic zone, the population of the world that is equivalent to India. So that's a lot of people. And India will have access to that and duty-free access to that. That's really the big thing, and you would expect that when the announcements are made.
Absolutely. Srinjoy, also talk to us about the significance of this visit in view of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the new world order that we're seeing. Egypt has also been largely impacted by the war.
Undoubtedly, it's a very good question. The largest importer of wheat in the world is Egypt. And the two largest exporters of wheat in the world were Russia and the Ukraine. So the answer is very clear. Now, the next point is, what can India do? India is one of the largest producers of wheat in the world. India has given some wheat to Egypt and could well give more wheat to Egypt. I believe that this could be one of the announcements in the near future. Maybe not today, and if today, perhaps yes, but even in the future, you would see more wheat going from India to the Egyptians, because they have a demand for wheat, they need the wheat, and they were the largest importers of wheat in the world. Why can't India pass on wheat to the Egyptians? And that is precisely what you expect India to do.
Absolutely. And talking about Egypt and the crucial geostrategic significance that it can have because of the Suez Canal, as we've discussed, you've also been mentioning it time and again, how that's going to be extremely significant because of the kind of trade that happens through Suez Canal and the talks that have been suggested until now, the Indian investments that will be coming in. Suez Canal really could be the gateway that India is looking for the big markets in African as well as European countries.
Well, India is focusing on Africa. India is looking at selling goods to Africa. India is not a kind of transactional country like China is. China's issue with Africa is, okay, we are giving you this much money, you give us this, 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 and this. On the other hand, India's relationship with Africa goes back many hundred years, over 1,000 years. As far as Egypt is concerned, both Egyptians and Indians are talking about two famous Indians and Egyptians of the past. That is Emperor Ramesses and Emperor Ashoka. Both of them fought one big, devastating, bloody battle, after which they did not fight again. And there are similarities between these two great kings. And now even the Egyptians and Indians are talking about the similarities between Ashoka and Ramesses. Ramesses, of course, was one of the world's greatest builders, and that should not be forgotten. So India and Egypt go back a long way. India and Africa go back a long way. If there's an economic relationship between India and Africa, it will not be transactional. It will not be, I'm throwing this kind of money to you, you do this, that, and so on for me. It will be the way brothers work. It will be the way friends work. And that is exactly what we get to see with the Prime Minister in Egypt, with the Prime Minister in Cairo, going to the Heliopolis Cemetery, going to the mosque, and making it clear that he and President Sisi are friends, and President Sisi is welcome in Delhi in September.
And there have already been several visits. So, you know, the personal touch that we were talking about as well. But you mentioned the cultural roots of India and Egypt go back really long. But also talking about the cultural ties, it's also important to mention the Indian film industry. That was the highlight really yesterday as the Prime Minister arrived. It was not just the Indian diaspora, but also several Egyptian citizens who had come forward to welcome the Prime Minister. And several Bollywood songs were the theme of the day as they welcomed the Prime Minister. So that also speaks volumes about the culture that exists currently, not just with the Indian diaspora, but it's also rooted very deeply in the Egyptian citizens.
Yes, there is no doubt about that Bollywood is in some ways a cultural game changer. Bollywood, wherever Bollywood has reached, Bollywood has created an impact. There are Indians in Egypt, there are Egyptians in Egypt who like Bollywood, who link themselves to Bollywood, and we saw that yesterday. So that is a plus. That is an addition to what the Indian government and the Indian people are doing. Fine, if Bollywood makes a difference, if Bollywood makes a positive difference, that's very good.
Yes, and you know, not just the Egyptian citizens who had come forward to welcome the Prime Minister, the Indian diaspora as well, and it would be incomplete without, of course, mentioning the Bohra community members who accorded not just a warm welcome to the Prime Minister, but have also been a very significant part of his own political journey as well. In fact, Prime Minister Modi's bonhomie with the Bohra community goes back several decades when he was the Gujarat Chief Minister, and Prime Minister Modi himself has also spoken about the significance of it when he met the community members members in Mumbai as well. He mentioned that I'm not here as the Prime Minister of the country, I'm here as a family member. So the ties that the Prime Minister has spoken of was quite evident today in Egypt as well.
Yes, not just Egypt, also in Gujarat, also in large parts of India, also in many parts of the world. Prime Minister has reached out, and it's a very clear sign of where he stands in life. And he didn't have to go to the Al-Hakim Mosque. He didn't have to meet the Bohras, but he did. And why did he do it? Because he believes that such a meeting is actually good. So that is how he feels, and that feeling should be respected. The Prime Minister has reached out to the Bohras. He has gone to the Al-Hakim Mosque. He has had a long chat with the Grand Mufti. You saw that. You saw that the Grand Mufti and the Prime Minister chatting at the mosque. Now, it's a clear sign that it's a decision by the Prime Minister to go to the mosque, and he did. And this visit to the mosque is before his meeting, his official meeting with President Sisi. What does that say? It's a very important point, isn't it? Of course, the meeting with the President is going to starting, in fact, as a matter of fact, and a lot is expected from the meeting.